In today's video, I'm going to be predicting the entirety of the 2023 NBA playoffs. I'm going to be giving my reason backed up by statistics from the matchups, and some are only because of the eye test in seeing these games. Of course, this is just my opinion, but I'm going to be completely unbiased. For starters, my team is not even in the playoffs since I root for the Dallas Mavericks, so I can't be biased for my own team, sadly. I had done a playoff bracket before the play-in started, but I decided to do this video after the play-in because, for example, I had Miami beating Atlanta, and Atlanta beating either Toronto or Bulls. But that's out the window after Bam Adebayo couldn't get a single rebound versus Capella, and playoff trade decided to show up, so yes, I had to restart my bracket. But I don't mind this since there was a lot of changes to my bracket. I saw a lot of interviews, players, and coaches' playoff stats, and overall matchups that helped reach a final conclusion in each series, going all the way to a final. There may be a series I touch a lot, going through every specific player, while there are others that I just say what I think will happen and not give it much attention. Now, we will start with first round in the West. Nuggets number 1 seed versus Timberwolves number 8 seed. The Denver Nuggets is one of the, if not the, team with the most pressure in the whole of the league right now. They have a back-to-back MVP in Nikola Jokic, who is fighting for his third straight, although I think Embiid has it in the bag. They have playoff Murray back while having an Aaron Gordon who rejuvenated this season and a Michael Porter Jr. who is trying to prove he still has it to play in the big stage. In my original bracket, I had Minnesota in this matchup, and I still think they have the chance to reach the 8th seed, but I really do not know how they will match up versus Denver. Yes, I do have Denver going through, but I don't think it will be that easy for them either. Minnesota, if they play with an aggressive Karl-Anthony Towns, can make a push for a maximum a 6-game series. Jokic has the best defensive rating in the league, but the eye test doesn't tell you that. Jokic is amazing at pretty much everything in the game, but defense ain't one of his strengths, which is where Cat can shine as a very high offense center. What I didn't like about the Timberwolves, from what I saw in the Lakers playing game, was their lack of playoff experience and their excessive turnovers and crunch time. They had that 7th seed locked in by the third quarter, but it all went crumbling down as the Lakers' playoff experience shined through at the end. I have Denver going through with a gentleman's sweep on the Timberwolves, 4-1. Now for the second matchup, Grizzlies number 2 seed versus the Lakers number 7 seed. This is a highly anticipated matchup as we see the Lakers back in the playoffs. Off a historic season by LeBron James breaking Kareem's record and Anthony Davis' sudden rise to his good old self, Lakers fans have a lot to be excited about. In the play-in, they started the first half shaky, with a lot of turnovers, but it was their playoff experience, as previously said, that brought them back into the game to secure that 7th seed. Although they did blow that lead with 1.2 seconds remaining, I can still see them contending in this year's playoffs. Memphis, on the other hand, needs this series to be in their favor. They have been, during the last few years, an upcoming young core that are hungry to win, but their attitude and off-court issues have plagued this team from reaching their true potential. John Morant has a large chip on his shoulder, after leaving the team through a short time because of his actions outside the court involving a gun and strippers, and Dillon Brooks' antics are also to be looked out for, especially after telling the media that he wants the Lakers to eliminate LeBron. The matchup to look out for will be Anthony Davis versus Jaren Jackson Jr. After Steven Adams' injury, Memphis hasn't been able to protect the glass as well as when we have seen on the court. When Adams is not on the court, Memphis' offensive and defensive rebound percentage lower dramatically by 10 and 3.5%. Although this is a huge blow, Jaren Jackson Jr. has been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate throughout this season, and he will be on duty to stop Anthony Davis dominating the paint during this series. I feel it will be a long series, and I feel that the Lakers' playoff and leadership presence will be enough to beat Memphis in 6, but it could go to 7 as well. I have the Lakers beating the Grizzlies in 6 in LA because of their home advantage. That's the only reason I'm going in 6, because if it reaches 7, it's very hard for me to see the Grizzlies losing at home with that atmosphere. My final prediction is the Lakers in 6. For the third matchup, we have the number 3 Kings versus the number 6 Warriors. This might be one of the most exciting matchups of this whole first round. The Sacramento Kings are finally back in the playoffs after 16 years, and they're present facing the 6th-seeded Warriors. This matchup is not one Kings wanted since the Warriors just won a championship last season, and their seed is not representative of what they are. Although they have struggled to win away games this season, the Warriors have their team fully healthy for the playoffs, something they haven't seen in a while. Although they are still missing Andrew Wiggins, the Warriors have helped replace his duties with DiVincenzo and Kuminga. Their most used lineup has been Steph, Clay, Draymond, Looney, and Wiggins, but since Wiggins left the squad, they have replaced Wiggins with DiVincenzo, where in a small sample size they have a higher winning percentage with that lineup than the original one. Besides Wiggins, the main storyline behind this Warriors season has been the lack of closing games in the opponent's court. In other words, not winning away games. With a win streak no longer than 5 games, the Warriors went 11-30 in away games this regular season, but went 33-8 at home. This is huge to note since the Kings have one of the craziest atmospheres in this year's NBA season, which could play a huge role for them in the opening 2 games. Now on to the Kings. They have a great chance to surprise many people in this year's playoffs due to their high-paced offense, but what could limit their potential playoff run is their defense. They were the 6th worst in defensive rating and worst among playoff teams right now. Luckily for them, they have the highest offensive rating in the whole league, which could cancel out their defensive rating in some games during this series. Look, I want to say the Kings have a chance, and they do, but the lack of playoff experience can hurt them, especially against a team that has reached 6 finals in the past 8 years. I do think though that the Kings will give the Warriors a headache, and I can see this series going to 7. The only reason I back the Warriors in a Game 7 at Sacramento is the fact that they will have something to prove, especially in an away game that's probably going to be sold out and filled with Kings fans. A safe prediction would be Warriors in 5 or 6, but I feel they will go 7, and we will see Warriors winning in a Game 7 at Golden One Center. Heading into the final matchup in the first round of the West, we have the 4-seeded Suns versus the 5-seeded Clippers. This is probably one of the tightest matchups so far. Phoenix has the addition of Kevin Durant on their team, which boosts the already great odds they had at reaching the finals this year. Having KD gives them various options to work with on their offense. If it's running through Booker, CP3, or KD, they won't have a problem with any. Since trading for KD, they have played only 8 games with a full starting 5, but they have gone 8 for 8 in those games, with the best defensive rating in the whole league at 109.6 and 121 in offensive rating. Of course, this is just a small sample size since it's just 8 games, but it's data worth noting. KD's trade could be a historic one for the Suns, since the last time a trade for such a high caliber player into a high caliber team mid-season was in the 2003-2004 season when Rasheed Wallace was traded to Detroit when they were 34-22 before and 20-6 after the trade, and eventually won the title that season. Although Phoenix does look like a favorite in this matchup, I ain't counting the Clippers out. The Clippers are a great overall team, and playoff Kawhi is a different animal. Trust me, I know from past series. Westbrook has something to prove, and what a better way to do it against KD. Ty Lue is a great coach, and I think we'll outsmart Monty Williams throughout this series in many games. One thing is for certain, this series will be a long one. There will be games that are high scoring, but there will also be games where defense stands out. And although the Suns had the defensive rating in those 8 games were against low efficient teams in the regular season. If Kawhi can play a high level of basketball and Paul George returns mid-series, the Clippers can surprise the Suns and the NBA world in this first round matchup. In my original bracket, I have Phoenix winning in 6 against the Clippers, which is a realistic option knowing that PG-13 may not be returning. But if he returns, I like the Clippers upsetting. I like the Clippers, and I know the Clippers team can perform in a close playoff series like this one, especially a healthy Kawhi. And something that the Suns don't have is the X factors in the team, such as Terrence Mann, who can light up a game at any moment. But the uncertain absence of PG-13 is the factor that leads me to think that the Suns will win. Although I think KD will have a great series, I do not know how the other Eagles in the team will perform during this stretch of games. I will still take Phoenix winning because they have the best player in the series in KD, but it won't be easy one at all. I predict Phoenix in 7 games. Now heading to the first round in the East, we have the 1st seeded Bucks versus the 8th seeded Heat. I'm very high on the Bucks this season. I truly think it's the best team in the NBA right now, due to their balancing great offense and great defense. Brook Lopez has had a career year and he is 35 years old. In one of the latest games this season, he had 9 blocks in one game and is one of the most underrated picks for Defensive Player of the Year. Besides Brook, Jrue Holiday is also on a career year, with a great performance just under 2 weeks ago with 50+ points games. This rise of career years for these 2 players is the sole reason why Giannis will win MVP this year, because if it were not by that, Giannis would be a solid pick for the most valuable player in the league. Averaging 31.1 points and 11.8 rebounds, Giannis did about everything this year. When speaking about the Bucks as a team, their defensive rating is in the top 4 of the league with 111.9, and although their offensive rating isn't that great, they have back a healthy Chris Middleton for the rest of the playoffs. Now, let's go to the other side of the court. Miami just came off a long playing stretch where they got a set with the Hawks and then the Bulls. When talking about their matchup versus the Bucks, I think it will be like the championship run the Bucks had where they matched up with the Heat in the first round as well and swept them. Although I should never count out Butler's hustle in the playoff scenery, I can see this as a gentleman's sweep or a simple sweep just because I don't see this Bucks team giving up more than one game, especially in the first round. My final prediction is the Bucks sweeping the Miami Heat. Now for the second matchup, we had the number 2 seed Celtics versus the number 7 seed Hawks. When the Hawks won the play-in against Miami, I forgot how good a playoff trade was. But Boston fans were celebrating not facing Miami in the first round because they know of the threat Miami could be in a 7-game series. Of course, I have Boston going through, but the question is, how many? The Hawks were the definition of mid this season, finishing 41-41 and are penultimate in defensive rankings of teams that are in the playoffs, but they are top 7 offensive rating with 116.6, and Trae Young just came off a career high season in assists, 10.2, leading the league in assists and just second off of James Harden in assists per game, which is 10.7. Now going into Boston's team, there is not much to say except they are literally one of the best teams in the league, but in the past few months they have declined in their value, which is why I'm not that high in Boston sweeping this series. I could see this series going to 5 or 6 games, with Atlanta at least stealing one game just because playoff Trae can really get on Boston's nerves. Tatum had one of the best starts in his career this season, where he was getting MVP shots, but now it seems like Jaylen Brown's team these past few months. If they can get a Tatum and Brown special, I can see a clear sweep, but for now my prediction is a gentleman's sweep by the Celtics. Heading to the third matchup, we have the number 3 seed 76ers versus the number 6 seed Nets. This matchup would have been perfect a few months ago. Kevin Durant and Kyrie versus Embiid and Harden would have been box office first round, but recent trades didn't make this happen. This Nets team gets a lot of shouts as a previous fun Nets team that everyone in the league loved. Led by Bridges and Dinwiddie, this Nets team could have done damage against a lower tier team, but they get to face arguably the MVP in the league and highest scorer per game in Joel Embiid. Although the main storyline left when the trade occurred, Mikal Bridges, who is playing amazing basketball since arriving on the Nets, has a chip on his shoulder since the 76ers drafted him and traded him on the same night, when he really wanted to play for the city of Philadelphia. I don't really have much analysis in this matchup since it's straight up a matchup that is great for the 76ers to start their championship run, since this is a Nets team that can give them an extra game to warm up before their conference semifinals matchup. My prediction for this series is another gentleman's sweep by the 76ers this time. Heading into the final matchup in the first round, we have the 4-seeded Cavs versus the 5-seeded Knicks. This is the best game in the East first round by a mile. This matchup has prehistory as well, starting from the offseason. The Knicks decided to pay for Jalen Brunson instead of Donovan Mitchell, but I think it was a decision that benefited both teams in the long run. In offensive rating, both teams are in the top 10. The Knicks in third with 117.8 and the Cavs with 116.1, but only one is in the top 10 in defensive rating, with the Cavs in second with 110.6, only behind the Celtics with 111.5. The Knicks are in 19th with a rating of 114.8. When talking about matchup, this will be a very hard-fought series. Both teams are bottom 5 teams in pace, Cavs dead last with a 95.7 and Knicks bottom 5 with 97.1. Some games could be high scoring, but I can see games being under 90 points basically purely on defense from both teams. Something to keep an eye out is Julius Randle, who can miss game 1 due to injury, but rising stars like Obi Toppin and Quickly can cover his offensive role easily. When talking about the Knicks, they have a superstar in Jalen Brunson, who left the Dallas Mavericks this offseason to play in the team he has always wanted to play in. He has had a great season, and with a starting role he made sure he let his team impact be known, averaging 24 points with 6.2 assists per game. Now going into the other acquisition down in Cleveland, we have the All-Star, who we already knew was good in Donovan Mitchell. Donovan had his best season yet in averaging points with 28.3 points per game, while also being among the top 10 in user rate percentage with 32.1%. Of course, these two players are not the only players that are impactful in their teams. The only way one of these teams dominate the others by their other stars beside Brunson and Mitchell. Cleveland needs LeVert, Garland, and Mobley to step up to the big stage, since we all know how Donovan plays in the playoffs. In the Knicks side, RJ Barrett needs to step up big time, since Randall and Brunson have been performing great during the last stretch of the season. Like said before, I do think this will be a long series, and yes, I think it will be played down to a Game 7 in Cleveland. My prediction is Cavs in 7, just because they have an elite defending and playoff Donovan Mitchell's more than a superstar. I feel Garland will step up big time and show his true potential in the biggest stage, and the Cavs will close out Game 7 on their court. Now we have the Western Conference Semifinals, when the first matchup is the number 1 seed Nuggets and the number 4 seed Suns. Going into the first matchup in the Western Conference Semis, the Nuggets got an opponent who they would have not wanted in the series, Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. These two teams have also gone against each other in the playoffs in recent history, going back to the Suns' run in 2021 where they swept the Nuggets in the conference semis. As previously said before, the Nuggets are the team with the most pressure, and second to that is the Suns because of the acquisition of KD. Both teams, both with the pressure to perform well due to their high expectation, but who is going to actually perform? Nikola Jokic is going to be the highlight of the Nuggets this series, since DeAndre Ayton won't be able to defend his powerhouse mentality, but it's what the others will do that can affect them. When you go player for player, position for position, the Phoenix Suns are clearly better on the offensive end, but on the defensive end, the Nuggets are better. Both teams have one of the lowest pace ratings in the league, with Denver having 98.1 and Phoenix 98.2. This means that it will be a tough, long, slow series in terms of scoring just because they both play through the shot clock a lot, and sometimes defense will overpower these plays. Although this isn't accurate enough, Kevin Durant is 12-4 versus Nikola Jokic, but not only that, Devin Booker averaged 21 points and 7 assists in only 2 games this season versus the Nuggets, while Jamal Murray also averaged 21 points with 5.5 assists. The difference between this match will be how good can the Nuggets role players like Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. can play for the team in this series. Gordon averaged 22 points with 7 boards against the Suns this season, but they were against the Durant-less Suns, and Michael Porter Jr. only averaged 9 points with 5.5 rebounds. If the Nuggets want to win this series, everyone has to step up, but I don't think that will be enough for them since the offensive strategy by the Suns is unstoppable. Either you guard Durant, Booker, Paul, Ayton alone, or double team one and leave the other one open. I feel the Nuggets won't be sufficiently experienced to come up with a plan to stop him, which is why I am taking Phoenix in 6. Heading into the second matchup, we have the 6-seeded Warriors versus the 7-seed Lakers. This is a matchup we have seen before in the first ever playing in a game. The Lakers defeating Memphis will be an upset that not many people would be surprised about. Their playoff experience and leaders within the team will help them during these playoffs, but I feel it ends here. The Warriors have the highest pace in the league with 101.6, and the Lakers do not have a strong depth to potentially rotate their players through a whole series. If the Lakers would want to win this series, they would have to play LeBron and AD 40 minutes every game to keep it close because the Warriors have a great team and a great depth to have a long playoff run. Poole, Gary Payton, Kuminga, those are a few of the players that can make the Lakers go crazy in bench minutes. AD will have a great series though, because the Warriors don't have a solid big man in their team that can guard him. He has averaged 23 points with 11 rebounds and 2 blocks per game during his Laker tenure versus the Warriors, and I don't think that domination will stop during this series. Although I am high on AD, I still don't think the likes of Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and D'Lo can defend guys like Steph, Clay, and Poole, who are going to be running 24/7 during the whole game until one of them slips and leaves one open. Because of this reason, I can see the Warriors winning either 6 or 7 games, but my final prediction is Warriors in 6. Heading into the Eastern Conference Semis, we have the number 1 seeded Bucks and the 4 seeded Cavs. Heading to the first Eastern Conference semifinal, we have a young core of the Cavs going against the mighty Bucks. I hate the fact that the Cavaliers got matched up against arguably the best team in the league just because I love their young core and they have every piece to go further into the playoffs. Pieces like Donovan Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen, Okoro, LeVert, and more. But they have to match up against Giannis, Holiday, Middleton, and Brook Lopez, besides also going against Connaughton, Bobby Portis, and Joe Ingles. The Cavs have everything to make this a competitive series, which I think will be due to their great defending and great offense. But they would need to figure out how to take out Giannis from the equation, while also having in mind how to stop Holiday and company from taking advantage of an off night by Giannis. In only 3 games, Giannis averaged 33 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, and a block per game against the Cavs. If you can't stop that, which I think you can't, you would also have to stop Jrue Holiday, who had 28 points and 10 assists on their last meeting in the regular season. It's going to be a long series, and one that can surprise many due to the fact that the Cavs team is hungry to win. And if they don't this year, in upcoming years they will contend with their young core. Darius Garland is in his first playoffs, and once he gets the exposure of a long playoff series, this team will be scary in the future. But for now, I'm picking the Bucks to win in 6 because I am confident that the Cavs can at least rob the Bucks from 2 games, especially at home. Heading into the second matchup, we have the number 2 seed Celtics versus the number 3 76ers. This will probably be the biggest matchup in the conference semifinal round. Both giants, both teams having elite players, and both teams just hating each other. Their fan bases are arguably one of the most toxic fan bases in the whole league, and they are going against each other in a historic battle between the 76ers and the Celtics. This matchup is one of the most balanced matchups one can see during these playoffs, and it truly can be a 7-game series that anybody could win. The Celtics have dominated this matchup during the recent years and are 3-1 versus the 76ers this season, and the only game they lost against them, Jaylen Brown didn't play. Although the 76ers have been losing against the Celtics during these last few years, they have one thing that Boston doesn't have: Embiid. Some series during the last few playoffs have been decided on who truly has the best player in the series. Last year versus the Suns, Dallas had Luka, the best player in the series. 2 seasons ago, the Bucks had Giannis versus the Knicks, and this year, the 76ers have Embiid. I truly think this is 76ers' year to potentially break the curse versus the Celtics, and Embiid will yet again dominate the paint in this matchup. In that 4-game stretch this season, Embiid averaged 36.8 points, 11.8 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks per game, while only averaging 0.5 3-pointers, which means all his points come from dominating the paint and being in the free throw line. Of course, it can't only depend on this, since Maxey and Harden are playing elite basketball. Both can have a great series against Boston, but the Celtics stars are going to definitely have a great series as well. Tatum has to perform well because he kinda choked in the finals last year and is since then on a revenge tour. He has averaged 21 points, 9 boards, and 6 assists against the 76ers this season, but if they wanted to win, they might need a bit more than to eventually beat this team. I truly think it's the 76ers' year to reach the conference final, and I have them winning this series in 7 at the Garden. Heading to the Western Conference Finals, we have the number 4 seed Suns versus the number 6 Warriors. Conference Finals, where teams are on the final hurdle before the final. The Suns are, at this point, the team with most pressure after potentially eliminating the Nuggets, and their prize is going against the experienced Warriors as a 6th seed. The Suns have been at this stage before during these last 3 years, where they are a step away from reaching the finals, but this matchup may come down to pure shot making and defending. Yes, it may sound very obvious that that's what it will come down to, but when it's 2 powerhouses, it literally comes down to what person makes their shots and who doesn't. Kevin Durant is going back to San Francisco in this series, and is going against Curry and company for the first time in the playoffs since his OKC days, where in memory check, the Warriors came from a 3-1 deficit to eliminate Durant and the Thunder. Steph has averaged 25.5 points, 6.9 assists, and 4.5 rebounds against Durant in his career, while Durant has averaged 30.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Now you may ask, why is this important? Why did KD not win more without Curry and the Warriors if he is better? It's simple. What started the comeback and finished it in that series versus OKC was a singular player, which is why the Warriors are such a threat: Klay Thompson. My X factor in this series is the resurgence of Klay Thompson this season. Now the 3rd player ever to reach 303 point mates and league leader in 3-point field goals for this season, Klay came back better than ever and is looking to have a strong playoff campaign this season. Klay can easily be the difference between these 2 teams because at any game, he can be the hottest shooter on the planet, and we saw it many times during this season where he had games over 12 threes, coming short from breaking Steph's record in many games this season. With Draymond's intelligence and way of controlling the tempo of the game and Curry and Klay's off-ball movement, I think it will be incredibly difficult for guys like Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant even to keep on running behind these guys to make them stop making shots. Also, important to note, Steph Curry owns Chris Paul with a 22-15 head-to-head record and averages 21.3 points, 5.9 assists, and 1.6 steals against him as well. Going on the other side of the matchup, Booker could also be the difference, since he can light up a series whenever he wants, where he averaged 31 points and 5.7 assists against the Warriors this season. Besides this, I still think the Warriors' championship mentality will surpass the Suns, and my prediction has the Warriors winning in 7, making Phoenix lose in back-to-back years in Game 7s at home. Now, for the Eastern Conference Finals, we have the number 1 seed Bucks versus the number 3 seed 76ers. Heading to the East, we have another historic matchup due to the narratives as well. Harden versus Holiday, and Embiid versus Giannis, who will be at the top of everything in this series. The 76ers are 4th in offensive rating and 9th in defensive rating, and potentially have the MVP of the league and scoring leader in Embiid, while having the assist leader in James Harden. But what could stop this duo in reaching the finals? Giannis and the Bucks can. I think this is where the 76ers stop their stretch in the playoffs, and it's not because they can't win, it's just because the Bucks will be unstoppable. Just like this season and seasons before, their core of Middleton, Holiday, and Giannis with the role players of Portis, Connaughton, and Ingles will be more than enough to defeat the 76ers. The 76ers don't have as much depth as the Bucks also, by also having House Jr., Korkmaz, Milton, Niang, and Melton. Also, going way back during Giannis' first MVP, Harden trash talk on how Giannis only runs and dunks to win the award, and Giannis 2 years later, by doing that, won a championship. And I think he will do it again and eliminate the 76ers with his supporting cast. Embiid, as usual, will have a great series, but his supporting cast won't be enough to beat the Bucks. Although I chose the 76ers to win against the Celtics, I do admit that the Celtics would have been a better matchup against the Bucks, but that doesn't make me want to change my pick because in that specific matchup, I prefer 76ers rather than the Celtics to have the upper hand. Besides the favoritism I have shown in favor of Milwaukee, I do have this series being a long one. Going to a 7th game in Milwaukee, closed out by a superstar performance by Giannis to send the Bucks to their 2nd final in 3 years. Now, we reach the NBA Finals. Number 1 seed Bucks versus number 6 seed Warriors. Finals time. And who would have thought we would see a 6 seed in a final? But when you take the number out, it ain't a surprise it's the Warriors versus the 1st seeded Bucks. This is a matchup I've been dying to see on the big stage, and I do admit that much of my predicting was in favor of this matchup. But the statistics and matchups did make sense to me, which is why we have this final. This final will be decided by not just one factor, but many. For the Milwaukee Bucks to win, they have to formulate a plan to stop Curry, Clay, and Poole from dominating from deep and force them to go inside the paint and work in the paint where the Bucks dominate. Also, they have to cancel whatever performance the bench depth does against them, since the Warriors have great depth in bench minutes on the court, where they get much of their scoring runs during this season. Now going on the Warriors side, the way they can't win these games in the finals is by showing their championship mentality against a team that has already won it, which will be hard, but of course, 4 championship is greater than 1. They would also have to lock up Giannis from dominating the paint, and although there may be games that Giannis doesn't score 35 and 40, they can't allow him to be getting 12 to 15 rebounds a game versus Looney and Draymond. In my opinion, the Warriors have a lot more to worry about than the Bucks, because for example, the Bucks have an elite defense. The Bucks rank 4th in defensive rating this season with 111.9, and players like Jrue Holiday and Middleton can defend very well against guards. Giannis, of course, can defend the 1 through 5 as well, which is a liability for players like Steph and Poole who depend on the pick and roll and sometimes ISO situations, which they can't do against lockdown defenders like Holiday. As previously said, I think Clay will have a great playoff run, and for me, if the Warriors want to win, they need a championship mentality Klay Thompson to take the weight off Curry's shoulders and shoot lights out to defeat the Bucks. But I can see more the fact of Giannis playing a heck of a series where he averaged 30 points, 15 rebounds, and at least 5 assists to win a 2nd championship for the city of Milwaukee. This series will definitely be a long one, and I see it going 7 games, and for my final prediction, I have the Milwaukee Bucks winning the 2023 NBA Finals in 7 games versus the Golden State Warriors. This championship run will define Giannis' legacy and finally solidify him as a top 10 player of all time. I hope you guys like this type of video. It's a long one with a lot of research involved, and now of course this is my prediction with my own interpretation of the data. The NBA Finals start today, so let's get these games ready to go. And to just let you know, I will do a finals preview with more information and analysis when the time comes, because of course this is a prediction with the only regular season data, which could change dramatically during the playoffs. Peace.